What's up folks, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Times Classics channel. It's time for another one of my Let's Play videos, and in this episode I'm going to be taking on the Temple of Apollo Epicurius at Bassae, combining gameplay with my usual historical commentary. If you like this video, please do consider dropping a like and subscribe. Let's dive straight into it. So this is a temple dedicated to the god Apollo, located in this region of Greece known as Bassae. Bassae is a municipality of Arcadia, and the temple sits not too far away from the sanctuary of Zeus, located in Olympia. This is where the famous Olympic Games would take place. The temple's about 36 miles away from this sanctuary. Now there's loads of unusual features associated with this temple, which I'll explain throughout this video. The first being where it's located. It's in this really remote location on top of this mountain. And we would expect a temple dedicated to Apollo, the god of prophecy, healing, music, among many other things, to perhaps have a temple in a more easily accessible location. But instead, it's here, on top of this mountain, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Now, Apollo has the epithet Epicurius attached to this temple, and Epicurius means the helper. And there's a pretty good theory that the people of Bassae suffered some sort of plague at some point. And so after they survived it, they built this temple here to Apollo, who has a role in healing, to thank the god for their survival. And therefore that may explain why we have a temple in such a remote location. Now, as we look at the temple here, we can see that it's still very much under construction. Work began on this temple in about 450 BC, and it didn't finish until the end of the century. Given that the Peloponnesian War kicked off in 431 BC, which is when this game is set, it's pretty safe to assume here that the Peloponnesian War would have slowed down the construction of the temple, which is why it's in the state we see here in 431 BC. I'm going to do my best to explore the temple and talk about some of its key features whilst taking out these guards as quietly as possible. But I'm a little worried, they're quite closely packed in. I'm a little worried that as we take them out, they may notice one another and raise the alarm, but we'll see how it goes. I've started off alright at least. Now the temple survives really well today, and that's mainly due to its remote location, but also the lead architect involved in this temple was Ictinus, and he was the lead architect or at least one of the lead architects involved in the Parthenon project. So we know that we have a really capable architect involved in this project, and would suggest therefore that the temple's been constructed really well. In 1986, the temple becomes a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's covered with this huge white tent that is there to keep the elements out, but it also enables the archaeologists to carry on their conservation. Luckily that didn't raise the alarm. Okay. Now, more about the unusual features of this temple. Most Greek temples are built on an east to west orientation, and the reason for this is to let the light of the rising sun in. But we can see perhaps from my compass at the top here that this temple is on a north to south orientation. And I'm not really sure why that's the case. Perhaps because they're building it on top of a mountain, there's limited space, so they've had to invert the normal orientation of a temple. Whatever the reason, we know that we would have a door in the side of the temple that would have to let the light of the rising sun in, and this would illuminate the rest of the naos, the inner room, and also, importantly, the cult statue. Now, the cult statue in question would usually be a representation of the god, so we'd expect a statue of Apollo, but perhaps there was a statue of Apollo in this temple, but it doesn't survive to us. What is in the centre of this temple is a Corinthian column. That's a column with the foliage at the very top rather than the Ionic scrolls, which are just left bare like Doric columns. And there is a theory out there that perhaps that was meant to be the cult statue, this column instead, which is some sort of symbolic representation of the god. Whatever the reason, having a Corinthian column inside is again another unusual feature. So because we've got a Corinthian column, and we have these Doric columns outside it, and inside is an Ionic continuous frieze, we have a combination of three different architectural orders. Again, not a usual feature. So inside the temple is a really famous sculpture. It's a continuous ionic frieze that depicts the Centromachy. That's the battle between the half-human, half-horse figures, the centaurs, against a tribe from Thessaly known as the Lapiths. And on the other side, there was the Amazonomachy, which is where Heracles fought against the Amazonians as part of one of his labours, when he's trying to steal the belt of their queen, Hippolyta. And we'd have this continual band of sculpture going along all the way around the nails. The nails would be much bigger than is depicted here in the game. And there's several interesting scenes depicted there that I'll throw up here, such as we've got Heracles fighting in the middle of these Amazonians here, or we have this other scene where we've got these dying Amazonians, they're in different stages of the conflict. And on the Centromachy, we have this particularly interesting scene where one centaur's leaping over the dead body of another. There's a lot of positives about this. We see it's a very dynamic and interesting frieze, lots going on, lots to look at, very interesting, capturing the chaos of a battle quite nicely. But there are some negatives. The anatomy's not really as realistic as we might see in other friezes of its time. And also there are some notable mistakes. For example, back on this centaur leaping over the other one, we can spot that we've got a face sculpted into the shoulder of one of these centaurs where the sculptors made a bit of a mistake and then rectified the work later. Nevertheless, the frieze has got a really interesting theme of Greeks fighting non-Greeks, the centaurs and the Amazonians. And because of that, it stands as a symbol of civilization versus barbarism. And that's a key theme in Greek art. And that's another reason why this temple, particularly its decoration, is so often studied, because that theme is seen as so important. I really like this aspect of Assassin's Creed where, you know, this isn't even a side quest, certainly not a main quest in the game, but certain areas are fortified and garrisoned, and it does sort of allow you to sort of hone your skills and practice a little bit and sort of change up your different fighting styles and test weapons. I don't know how the fighting sort of stacks up with the later Assassin's Creed games. I haven't played them, but I certainly think this stands out as being a really fun game. Let me know in the comments how this compares to the later Assassin's Creed games. Now this is the last guy left, and earlier I noticed he was up there on that perch, and I really kind of want to dramatically take him out by, you know, doing the Spartan kick over the top of the mountain. So I'm gonna have to get him to chase me, I think. Let's see if we can do it.
I will destroy you.
I also really like the amount of different weapons you can use in the game, chopping up between the bows, the arrows, and everything else, and the swords, spears, shields. With the enemies as well, I think that's great. Okay. So we're going to try and do the Spartan kick. We'll see if it works. Ah, haha. Still, we have a chance. It's all about getting him in the right location now, isn't it? Oh. Not letting him do it to me. There we go. So that now concludes my tour of the Temple of Apollo here at Bassae. Do let me know in the comments how we like this mix between gameplay and historical commentary. And as ever, please do consider dropping a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. I'll catch you guys all in the next one.